Welcome to Underground Strategy Podcast. It is our first episode ever. My name is Max, and I'm sitting here, or I'm not sitting in the same room, but I'm talking to the co-founder and my friend, Tony.
Thanks so much, Max. Lovely to be here with you guys. And at Underground Strategy, what we do is we discuss war and peace, but we promise not to make it war and peace. It's going to be short, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to try and keep it as punchy as possible. So what we've done is we've written a book together. It's about Max's life, and let's rather say it's a memoir, how he served in the special forces, the special purpose units, and special operations. It's pretty cool, but we're not going to focus on that for today's episode. A little bit about myself. I'm also a veteran. I served in the SANDF, so that's the South African Army, and we were introduced by a mutual friend, Jason. I don't know if you remember that guy, Max.
I do. I do remember Jason. How can I forget? What about myself? Yeah, my name is Max. I have served 18... No, that's a lie. It's only 16 years in the Swedish Armed Forces. First as an Arctic Ranger, then I went into the special operations game, and after that I went into intelligence and private security.
That's pretty cool.
So that's basically our background. Yeah, it's not Navy SEALs, but I think we have something to bring to the table, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's all about terrain, right? Because some people are amphibious, or some people are airborne, and I think that Arctic Ranger element, it brings something pretty extreme to the table.
It does in some ways, but I would throw that one right back at you. I mean, you've been doing Africa for quite some time, and you have been you've been down and dirty in that environment, and I mean, it's not easy. It's a different game.
Yeah, so in South African Army, I'm a post SADF, so that's the new South Africa, part of that army, and yeah, we had a certain kind of context that we were operating in. I was a combat engineer, and so like many other conventional forces, we were at we did different operations in Southern Africa, in SADC, and then also some in Sudan, Darfur, in Congo, Burundi, the borders. So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Isn't Sudan pretty hairy territory? I mean, it's always been like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a bit of a dodgy history, and of course, the people are lovely. Like in any part of the world, they're absolutely great. I think we were deployed there at a time when there was the post-genocide. It was a terrible time when the world watched the famine happen, and the Janjaweed, that rebel group, were deployed by the government of Sudan, and we were really peacekeepers at that time. And that's actually the guy that you mentioned that we talked about earlier, Jason, and I were deployed on that mission, and that was I would say it's still it was a low intensity conflict.
Yeah, but I've seen the picture. I've seen the picture with the weapons and the flip-flops. I mean, that is what counts, right?
Yeah, that was a bit of a tricky evening. It was a tricky evening. So it's low intensity conflict. You get ambushes, people would attack your base, and you would just have to take in defensive positions when, at those times. So that was, that particular picture was taken after that, a cup of tea after, but everything was fine. I think there were some injuries, but it was no, it wasn't a high intensity battle, and it was all fine, to be honest. So, and I think you're right. So it is about different terrains, and I think for ourselves, it was a lot of the different African deployments, and I think on your end there was a bit more in the space of Europe, a bit of Latin America, Max.
You know my history well. I mean, you basically you helped to write the book about it. And it's been a bit of Latin America. It's been a bit of, the classical venues for Europeans, Afghanistan, Iraq, and a bit of Africa for myself, not as much as you, and then Latin America. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag. It's been interesting, I would say, at least. But yeah, it's been, I think you and I combined can at least we have some experience under our belts, and we can hopefully have some interesting conversations, because that is what we usually have.
I think so. I think that's a lot about it. I think what we've that's a bit about our background and what brings us together, and we hope to bring our listeners into these conversations with us. And how has your week been, though, Max?
My week has been, I've had a bit of a cold. I don't think it was COVID. I think I had, because, I travel a lot, and every time I sit my ass down on an airplane, train, bus, it happens. So then you're sick for a few weeks. So it's been this kind of end of the summer cold.
You're getting old.
Yeah, I mean, that is age coming right at you. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna think about that as much yet, but it is age coming at you. But I'm good with that. So I've been really good. We have, you also know, I mean, we've been busy. I've been recording podcast with Ryan Fugit. That was super excellent, and it's coming out this. I think it's we're in the beginning of September. It comes out this Saturday.
Excellent,
and I'm excited. And of course, I'm not going to listen to it because I don't dare to. But you will, and you will give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And otherwise, I've been good. And you?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I'm similar to you. I never like the sound of my own voice, so it's going to be one of these things where I never ever listen back to anything that I record. So I'll wait for the 1 stars to come in from our listeners to know that I need to put in a different accent during our podcasts.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, to all the listeners out there, if there are any, maybe you pick it up on your ham radio somewhere. If anybody hears this, you're most welcome to reach out to us if you have any suggestions about the technical quality, what we can improve. I mean, this is our first rodeo. Me and Tony, we write. That's our main game. And but we also like to talk, and now we're trying to record it. But if you have anything, suggestions, tips, tricks, subjects, whatever, or want to talk about whatever, you can reach out on undergroundstrategy.com and Underground Strategy on Instagram. So it's always open.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool to get any insights from folks. We're just starting up, as Max said. We do a lot of different things, some of it a bit more academic and some things a bit more contemporary. And I think we're keen to get your thoughts on it, and also if you have any suggestions for guests when you get tired of hearing the two of us bantering about, talking about things. But yeah, it's been a busy week. We've been preparing for the launch of the book number 788. And as Max was saying, a couple of different podcasts getting the word out there, and a little not so humble brag.
What's your stress level been this week?
This week, it's not been too bad, to be honest with you. It's been a little bit up and down, but because, as we spoke about, I took Wednesday off, so that's helped me a bit. I think it's kind of positive stress at this point. Last minute logistics with the book. You've been there we've been there together, and then just waiting for that release date and then the launch date, which we'll be sure to tell the listeners about. So the release date, we're looking at the middle of September, and then there might be a slight delay for the US just due to shipping, because most of it will be out of Europe, out of the UK, and we'll get it out to the US. And then for the launch, we're looking towards the end of October. Just make sure the ebook's out, and we want to get some feedback from folks, and we basically take it from there.
Definitely. And you know why I actually asked you that question, because now you're responsible. I didn't say it. I just asked the question. You said the date. So if it doesn't happen, I'm going to come back to you. Anybody who wants to buy the book and you can, get back to Tony, because he was the one who said it. I said nothing. I just asked. I don't know either. So
I mean, I'll take the fall. I'll take the punch. That's cool. But yeah, we're really excited about it. It's been a couple of years. It's been almost 3 years in the making, and we won't go into too much detail right now. But just to say that it's a good product. Of course, at this point, we're looking forward. We're looking towards sequels, and that's also something to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. And I mean, you have. I don't know if you can tell them. I don't think you can tell them yet what you have going on, but I can tell them on your behalf that you have something really good cooking, and how excited I am about that, your next project that you're going to sit down and write from October or November this year. And yeah, so maybe in the future we might even have that guy on, I hope, and we'll talk about the product, because that's also really exciting.
That is a good product. That is a good project. Yeah, at the moment, I'm kind of sworn to secrecy for the next couple of months, and then I've got the go ahead to disclose a little bit more about that. And you're right, it is an exciting one, Max. And I'll add while we're talking about that, for folks interested in the more espionage side of things, the kind of current conflict in Russia, Ukraine, just keep your eyes out for Max's sequel. It's going to be good. And I think I know you don't want to say too much about it there. I hope I didn't put any spoilers there, Max.
No, I think that's basically what it is. And I hope I can deliver on that one. I have a story like many others, but I hope it can entertain or enlighten or something like that, at least.
Yeah, that's a bit of humility right there. Yeah, my stories. My story is like everyone's. It's like the accountant who lives next to me, or the maths professor. So yeah, no, of course, yours is a bit more exciting than that.
Yeah, they can get a sample if they want. We are publishing at a few outlets today, and one of them is SOFREP, and we have a few articles out on SOFREP, and one of them or two of them is actually about intelligence. Funnily enough, so that's not a bad place to start.
That is a good place to start. There's a couple of good pieces out there. We're sorry for the not so humble shamelessly pushing our work out there, but we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, we have to eat. Now we're getting old and crampy and sick and whatnot. So and we have to put food on the table.
That we do. That we do. I
had an interesting thing when when we're talking about what has happened this week. I was reading last week, and where I did my basic military service, right? The Arctic Ranger Regiment in Sweden, up north in Arvidsjaur. Do you want me to say it in Swedish?
Yeah, go on. Give us a flavor.
Norrlands Dragonregemente. That's K4. K4 Norrlands Dragonregemente. That's the true Swede name. You're only gonna hear it once.
That sounds good.
I did my basics there, right? So 50 months Arctic Ranger and all of that. And even when I was there, we had a lot of SF coming from overseas because it's the environment. It's in an area where it's extremely cold. It's extremely remote. It's a lot of snow. It's good conditions. So, American Special Forces, Spanish, Dutch, German, a bit of everything. So it's always been an interest to come there and exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And I read in the papers, it was even on the international news, and I guess it's because of the, Swedish ascension up into NATO finally.
Yeah, that was big.
And that it was a massive interest from NATO countries, both regular forces and special forces and special purpose units and whatnot that wanted to come. So the slots were fully booked, and people were like, it was a queue to get in, and I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, and I think the recent, on the geopolitical level, that's a big deal. We spoke about terrain earlier and how you prepare for warfare in some of those interesting and extreme conditions, and I believe your regiment is key for that. And I think that's definitely a capability. That's a big selling point. And I can only imagine that the recent Netflix series, which looks at elite units, that also pulls out some of those Ranger units or regiments. I think it's done quite a lot for brand building.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's. I think it's good for brand building. I think it's actually, among many units, it's a good unit.
Yes, pretty elite.
They will do their job in NATO, definitely.
Well, that's putting it mildly. They certainly will do their job, and for me as someone that's not from the special forces community, I'm just a regular soldier. From what I understand, it's very much about how you operate in those environments and how you're able to become force multipliers that counts. And I can even, why are you having a laugh?
Yeah, but I was thinking when you said that, because I know where you live. I'm not going to out where you live, but I know that you live in a rainy place. And I was like, yeah, but you operate in those conditions every day. It's basically the same. It's wind and rain, except you change that to snow and cold.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the South African boy lives in Scotland at the moment, in Edinburgh with my lovely wife and kids, and they put up with me just talking about military affairs as we're doing today. But yeah, it's. I suppose you're right. A lot of it is just adapting to the different conditions, and I suppose after the Russian invasion, it did become front and center. What would Sweden do, and as well as some of the other Nordic countries.
Definitely. I mean, it has always been. I mean, we're going to be honest here. Even when my dad, rest his soul, when he did his service in the 60s. I mean, the main enemy has been Russia, and I'm going to say it, or enemy, but that was we're surrounded by what? Norway, Denmark, Finland. We're all good neighbors. So it's always been, everybody that's done service, it's always about the Russians, right? So, but now it has been, in the early 2000s, it was really not a thing anymore. But now we're back in that. We have a name for it in Swedish, ryssskräcken, the fear of the Russians. We're back at that place. But I think we have less fear now and a bit more motivation and of course, more money to the army, NATO. People are, more aware of the security situation around us in Europe and all of that. So it's a different climate for sure, for everyone.
No, that's interesting. I think it makes sense. Sort of late 90s, early 2000s, especially with the 9/11 attacks, the war on terror. Putin was very much in support of the Americans at that point, and I think a lot happened with that relationship with Russia and the West that maybe didn't sit so well with Putin and some of his cronies, that had an impact on that relationship, right?
Exactly. And just for everyone who is listening now, you hear that I'm mostly winging it. So if you want reliable information, you're gonna listen to Tony, because I'm winging it and he has the facts. That's how it's always been. But I mean, we make a good team. We do. But yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, because you were the one that served in these cool regiments and had that first-hand experience of it all. I think that's maybe...
Yeah, but you also know how it started, right? And I've said that. I even said that to Ryan Fugit the other day. I wanted to be in the Navy. I never even wanted this, which is... it turned out very well for me, but I wanted to be a Navy guy. So, but here we are, here we are.
I mean, no one's perfect, right? No one's perfect.
No one's perfect. But maybe it's not too late. I mean, the Navy, they accept a bit older guys.
I mean, yeah. I mean, from what I can remember, the Navy accepts basically anything. But that's just a bit of...
You see, 2 Army guys starting, and straight away, first sacrifice, Navy, boom.
Starting some crap. No, of course, I've got very close friends who are Navy, and of course we love them. And no, of course they are great. And
I think we're mostly jealous because everybody else is out in the bush humping heavy. They're catching sun, doing epic shit on boats and stuff like that. I mean, what's not to like?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're just stupid if you don't like that. So
yeah,
all cred goes to the Navy.
Yeah, they've got a style. No, that's true. And I know I definitely have a lot of dear friends who are Navy, and yeah. I mean, what more can you say? It's I can't say too much because otherwise all the other Army guys are going to get on me about it. But yeah, it's this the rivalry is real. And
it is real.
I suppose in war we definitely need the Navy. White uniforms and all. We love them. I'm sure they feel the same way about the Army.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, but yeah, that's interesting stuff. I had one question for you because I actually don't know. I was thinking about it when I read this article about NATO, and I was thinking about NATO. I have served under many NATO commands, of course, Iraq, Afghanistan. I have never served in a NATO country. And I don't know about you. Have you ever served in a NATO country, or have you been United Nations, African Union? What's your experience?
So I've never served with... under a NATO country, in a NATO country, ever. I think for South Africa, it's always a key. It was always a key country geopolitically, geostrategically. Kind of the same way in terms of controlling sea routes to the east, if you're looking at from the Western point of view, And South Africa kind of balances this kind of carefully. So a lot of investment from the West, but yet we are part of the BRICS. So there's a link with Russia, and I want to say it delicately, but of course things to do with the liberation struggle of the past was there was a strong Soviet, so not the modern Russian, but the strong Soviet support, in terms of that kind of communist, the old school communist ideology. And
I love that. I mean, I don't love the Soviet part of it, but I love the intrigue. It's a lot of excitement.
Well, 100%. So I think that's why South Africa got a bit of a hard time after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And everyone said, oh, well, South Africa has chosen not to vote at the UN and has chosen not to speak out about the invasion and condemn it, but they rather put out these diplomatic terms, which is a bit of a cop-out. Like, oh, yeah, we want everyone to be at peace. And one thing about the ANC government is that they are very loyal. And it would be... And the counter-argument was, well, back then, the Soviet Union was actually the Ukraine and also Russia. So it's how are you cutting it?
Yeah, they see it far back. Have you gotten any shit for being a South African, or have you had any questions about this? Which side they're on?
No. Personally, I haven't. I think most folks get the idea that it's the government has taken a position, but that certainly isn't. There's a difference between the people of a country and the government. And in the UK, of course, it's very, I want to put it delicately, but pro-Ukraine, and a little bit on the side of condemning the invasion from Russia, which is very much the position of the West. But yeah, so coming back to your question, so considering that context, a lot of our missions was more African Union, as you said, and then also United Nations, and then the hybrid mission, UN and AU, which was in Darfur.
Yeah, but that is badass. That is badass on another level.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't... I think for us it was just what we were saddled with, right? And it was kind of limited operations. It was it wasn't high intensity conflicts, and we were there mostly. There was maybe some limited robust peacekeeping, but more. But it wasn't. I think some of the stuff that you've done was certainly for me next level, kind of Afghanistan, of course Kosovo, and
I've been on the African in the African theater, and
yes.
I mean for me. It's the environment it's challenging, and there's a lot of cultural clash. There's a lot of Africa it's a different sport,
Yeah,
altogether.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are quite a few obstacles. There's cultural context in the different countries, whether it's Mali or Somalia or Darfur.
And especially lately when we had the Wagner guys, been operating in Mali, and it's been quite a lot of excitement around that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think that...
Or excitement, controversy, rather.
Yeah, I think the African core of Wagner has definitely been something that Putin's been pushing, kind of a means to secure that kind of dictatorship, especially what we're seeing in West Africa, in the Sahel at the moment. And he's very much in support of that. And of course, behind all of this, we assume some evidence, but we assume also there are, of course, economic interests, right? And that's always the case.
Of course. Yeah, it's a classic.
100%. And you were saying that, so even though you hadn't served with in a NATO country, you certainly were part of that outfit, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sweden has been since forever so closely, close to NATO. We have the NATO stock system. Everything has been prepared since the 80s. And we've been, Partnership for Peace, all of that. So we are we were already, we were basically a member without a membership card. So
yeah.
And of course, I have been serving on UN-led missions. I've been serving on, but most of them has been NATO, because that's the main deal lately, with at least up until they closed down in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And that's completely understandable. Just not to nerd out too much, but it's one of the strongest security alliances throughout of history. So it's something I think, to be proud of, and something that we hope can go from strength to strength. It might change a little bit in the future, but it's definitely something that's withstood the relative test of time, right?
Definitely, and I mean, for me, I know we have different opinions on or slightly on this subject sometimes, and I mean it's going to be different discussions. But I know they always say that they're a defensive alliance, and I think that they are actually an offensive alliance also. But I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just how you put the words. But I think that could be a very interesting discussion. I mean, we could deep dive into that one day.
Totally. Yep. I agree with that, and of course with the missions in the Middle East, it would be hard to argue a defensive alliance, even though in paper it's there. And I think you're right. It comes down to geopolitics, right? Like what's the risk appetite and what's the chance of blowback.
Even NATO has been on the back burner. You know, if you look at the population in Europe and the Western world, even because, I mean, they have had nothing to do basically, and they have been, they have been engaging in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that was never very, it was not crowd pleasers, if we put it like that. So, but now it's in another light, because I think if you're going to have big defensive, like the Warsaw Pact or NATO, defensive, offensive, whatever military alliances, if they don't work for, if they don't prove their worth to, and I mean the civilian population, in X amount of time, it's hard to motivate, the money, the sacrifice, going on missions, blah, blah, blah. So I think organizations like that, they need this kind of Cold War vibe to survive, actually, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, they've traded on that for, since the 50s. So I completely agree with you. And then, as you were saying, the context after the Cold War kind of led to, as you put it in the book, in the Swedish context, the regimental death. Then in the 2000s, it's springing back to life with a need for different types of capabilities or special forces capabilities. And now what we're seeing is like, hang on, we actually need those tanks. We need some sort of defense industry. Because the conventional threat is still real, right? And that's what 2022 showed us.
And I mean, yeah, you're right. And it has, I mean, it's not funny, but it has almost created a meme storm, because we sold the regiment. Everybody knows the island of Gotland. It's been highly sought after. Everybody wants to be there. And, we sold the regiment, P-18, that was a armored regiment. We sold it for $1. The buildings and everything was just disbanded. So for sure, I mean, it was a different game, but nobody would ever, when Afghanistan emerged, Iraq emerged, you wanted flexible kind of multi-pronged units. You didn't want these heavy invasion kind of units anymore, but a mechanized unit. I mean, we demechanized 1998. We started to demechanize, but now we're back on it.
Yeah, 100%. Unfortunately, there are certain continuities of war, right? There's certain things where if you're not going to go for full nuclear war, you've got to go one step lower than that, and that, unfortunately, is conventional war, which has this very strong mechanized component or joint warfare component. And it's interesting from a pure, of course, brutally tragic from a human point of view, and then in terms of how we sort ourselves out in terms of defense policy and spending, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, maybe something we can pick up on another chat, just how that's happened. Because we don't have to go as far to just Ukraine. There were other terrible conflicts, just Ethiopia with Tigray. And, we saw how the drones were brought into good effect over there tactically. And then also in Nagorno-Karabakh, so there were flashes of how warfare is kind of changing a little bit or adapting a little bit. And then, of course, Russia-Ukraine becoming a massive flashpoint. And I suppose for the nerds out there and for the military historians and practitioners, it's really a case study. Like, how do we adapt for this kind of thing and train for it?
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I don't think realistically that a lot of military decision makers and thinkers were expecting this size of kind of mechanized classic type of traditional land invasion anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's.
No.
I think it was a alarm bell for everyone that you need to keep your forces agile.
Yeah, I think those are some of the continuities of war, right? So the fighter in the Second World War of a newly formed army unit and would have similar experiences, to put it very broadly, as the fighter in 2022-23 in Russia, whether it was the first attempt where they came from Belarus or whether it was later on the east. So I think there are continuities in war that we have to that we always have to consider. But Max, when we started this talk, we said we're going to talk about War and Peace, but we're not going to make it the book War and Peace. So I'm just thinking there might be a few listeners who are now soundly asleep, but I think as we wrap up, it's been really good to have our first episode. We wanted to introduce you guys. What we do is we talk about conflict in its different forms. We write in a few different outlets, and please come and see us at undergroundstrategy.com. And final word from Max.
No, I think you summed it up well. We've been really excited about this, and we are glad to be on the air. And if it can help anyone or entertain or inform anyone, we're going to be super happy about that. And just as Tony said, feel free to reach out. Instagram, you can find me as Max Lauker on Instagram, and we have Underground Strategies, or Underground Strategy. I'm sorry, I always confuse them. And then we have undergroundstrategy.com. So our doors are open, or not our doors, but our inboxes are open, and feel free, don't be a stranger. And I think we will be back in a week.
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Good talking to you, Tony, and talk soon. And I see all of you later.
Chat soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.